That bar is the one in. Okay. First thing, any declarations of interest? Oh, no.
Convener, Councillor Watson, I'm not sure if he's got connectivity issues. Councillor Watson is declaring an interest in application 20-00412-P, as he is, by virtue of being a shareholder in the company, acting as planning agent in respect of the planning application.
All right, okay. Any apologies? Mark, any apologies?
Convener, I've not received any notification of any apologies for this morning's meeting.
Okay, we'll just go on to the planning applications. First one is pages 8 to 18, and it's a Caledonian Housing Association, and it's 9 dwelling houses, site of Berrynow Avenue, Christon. Recommendation grant. Is that agreed? Thank you.
Agreed.
Agreed.
Next one is pages 19 to 25, and it's a Mr. Liqua Alley. It's a change of use from a public house to former shop, hot food takeaway. Is that last orders at the bar? Amendment to planning permission 17/00610 full. The Maltings Avonhill Shopping Centre, Pine Road, Avonhill, Cumbernauld. Recommendation grant.
Agreed.
Agreed?
Can I ask some questions on that, Convener?
Yep.
One or two concerns. There's a stipulation that they must have 2 numbered bins, and I would like to point out that overflowing bins have been a problem in the past. I've had to deal with some of these complaints regarding the shopping centre generally. Another point is, I notice in the report that this hot food carry-out place will be on the periphery. The word periphery is put in because the Maltings Public House is on the periphery of the town centre. So towards housing in Pine Road, the rest of the centre is originally designed to be well away from housing, but the Maltings, which was plainly just a pub, is fairly near to housing. But once you're into hot food carry-out places there, then it's getting near to the housing in Pine Road, and I hope the planners are pretty aware of that. The one point I would make is that one question I have is, are we guaranteed that 2/3 of this place will in fact be a shop? That's my first question. My second question is that the parking, the transportation people say the parking is all right, and they carefully word it at 6.1. There is sufficient parking associated to, the word to is there, the shopping precincts. Now, there is ample parking for the shopping precincts, but the Maltings is at the far end of the shopping precincts, and really people using a carry-out place there, and there's one pretty near it at that end, so there's now going to be 2. My problem is they don't seem to be addressing possible problems with parking in Pine Street or Pine Way, whatever it's called there. So I want a question about the parking in Pine Way. I would know is was in late. There were a number of complaints. About 55 letters came in. Were they from the Pine Close area? So that's questions on the bins, the parking in Pine, and the
2/3.
The petition, where the main complaints came from.
Okay.
I can answer that, Convener. In terms of the bins, that was a suggestion by our colleagues in environmental health. It tends to be a condition that they look to be added to when there's a hot food takeaway being considered, because of the type of use it is. There'll be responsibility on the owners to make sure that they're emptying their bins. But your point about overflowing bins is noted. In terms of the 2/3 of the unit being a shop, part of the problem was that the planning permission previously granted was for the whole of the former maltings to become a shop, and as we can give no guarantees about it being occupied, the applicant has indicated that they were having problems getting an occupant for the entire unit, and hence his proposal to reduce the size of the retail element and address a demand for a further hot food use in part of the unit. With regards to parking, you're right, our colleagues in Roads didn't have an objection in terms of parking. I think they viewed the fact that you've got a pub as part of the original kind of centre, and that that would have had its own parking requirement as well, which would be catered for by the general parking in the area, and that the proposed change to a shop and hot food takeaway would really increase that kind of level of parking demand. So I can't really speak for them other than to say I think that was why they didn't object to the proposed development. And in terms of the late petition, there was a number of people signed that. I can't off the top of my head give you a guarantee. I mean, the petition can be viewed online, and there's a whole range of signatures on there from people in the area and other occupants at the centre. We didn't cross-reference that to do, kind of make a determination on who had objected and where they were from.
Right. Well, I simply felt, convener, that the parking in Pine Road has possibly not been really concentrated upon, whether there's a problem. We've not heard of any problems with the carry-out place. It is already there, but I felt that there should have been another comment on Pine Road. Anyway, thanks.
Okay, the recommendations, Grant, is that agreed? Thank you. Pages 26 to 33, and it's the THUK and Ireland Limited. It's a Class 3 unit, food and drink with ancillary drive, takeaway and associated parking and landscaping works, Section 42 application to amend the Condition 3 of the planning permission to reschedule implementation of approved road widening work so that the works will be completed within 4 months of the use of the commencing site at 504 Windmill Hill Street, Motherwell. Could I ask Lorna to speak to this, because there's been quite a bit of representation on this one?
Thank you, convener. As the convener said, this application relates to a cafe and takeaway development at the corner of Windmill Hill Street and Nowtop Avenue that's occupied by Tim Hortons. Planning permission for this development was granted on the 23rd of August 2018, and one of the conditions attached to the permission required the developer to carry out road widening works at the junction of Nowtop Avenue and Windmill Hill Street prior to the business opening. As it stands, this condition has not been complied with, and the business opened without these works being carried out. The current application, which has been submitted under the terms of Section 42 of the Planning Act, seeks to amend the condition and to allow these junction widening works to be completed within 4 months of the business commencing operation, and that would take it to the 22nd of April 2021. The road widening works that are required by the condition are at the junction of Nowtop Avenue and Windmill Hill Street, and they require the creation of a second lane at the junction, which would permit a left-hand turn lane onto Windmill Hill Street and a right-hand turn lane onto Windmill Hill Street. The road service has been consulted on this application, and they have not objected to the postponement of the works until after the opening of the business. And they have agreed in consultation and discussion with the developer about the works required that actually the Easter holiday period is the best time for these works to be undertaken in terms of the disruption that would be caused. There's been a lot of local opposition to this application, including objections from the local members. Much of the opposition relates to localised congestion caused by vehicles accessing the Tim Hortons unit, and those vehicles are queuing back onto Now Top Avenue. And I have to say, it's not considered that actually the road widening works that are required by Condition 3 will actually have any impact on these tailbacks, reducing these tailbacks. Traffic congestion around developments of a similar nature, these drive-through takeaways, cafes, seem to be causing a bit of a problem right across the area, and in other parts of, sorry, my cat's joining in different areas across the country just now during lockdown, as people maybe are looking at something new and different to do in terms of this unit. And it's anticipated that the current congestion will become less as the novelty of this development moves on. We have been in discussion with the operator about the issues, and measures are being taken to trying to alleviate the situation, and those measures are referred to in the report. As I say, it does remain a new business and it is attracting a lot of customers at certain times, but we expect these pressures to ease. In addition to this, the road service has agreed to monitor the situation and to consider if any further steps would be required to improve the situation. I'm aware that local members and the local community are concerned that we haven't yet taken any enforcement action against the operator for breach of condition in the planning permission. But I just want to say that it's set out in paragraphs 8.10 and 8.11 of the report. That sort of clarifies the position in terms of enforcement action. But I just want to clarify again that the purpose of planning enforcement is not to punish the developer, and that any action that we do take against a developer has to be appropriate to the scale of the breach that's occurred, and that the guidance says that formal action should only be taken where a satisfactory outcome cannot be achieved by negotiation. And I'd highlight that we are currently in discussion with the developer over the proposal to carry out the roadworks. We believe the best situation is to grant the extension to the time period to comply with the condition. And I share everyone's frustration that the developer chose to open in advance of carrying out the works required by the planning permission. But we are working towards a solution. We do believe that the developer will carry out the works within the 4-month timescale. If that doesn't turn out to be the case, then planning enforcement does remain an option if we can't resolve this matter by negotiation. So that's really all I wanted to say, and I'm happy to answer any questions. Lorena.
Thanks, Lorna. I've got Councillor Alan Stubbs first, and then Councillor Fiona Fothergill.
Thanks, Harry. I've seen quite a bit in the local papers about this. It's not my area, and I'm not fully up to speed on the junction itself, but I've got a number of concerns about how this has been done. I think the main thing for me the main question that I have on it is the indication that's been given, certainly from reading the local press. Now, I know it's been a press statement that's been put out by a local member, that there's an indication that even if this committee today refuses to extend until April, that the planning service wouldn't do anything about it. I'd like maybe a little bit of clarification on what's been put out to the press on that issue. In terms of what Lorna just said about when's the best time to do this, and during the Easter holidays is somehow the best time for MD. Well, the schools are off at the moment and they're likely to be off for the duration of February. So what is the reason that we can't have these works completed by the end of February? Is it open to us, Harry, as a committee to change the recommendation in order to to put the end of February as the deadline rather than 4 months from opening. I'm looking through the representations that have been done. Some of them that I really do strongly agree with. I think number 2 at 7.2. The second point there, I think, is the most important one. It's totally unacceptable for the developer, for the company, to threaten the council with people losing their jobs because they haven't done the work that they were supposed to do. They were able to build the building and all the other infrastructure that came with it and the time scale that suited them, but they weren't able to do the road widening works. I'm quite concerned to hear from Lorna, and it comes back to a point that we've made before, that the road service, maybe they'll give representations, but they're not here at the planning. And I think that regularly we have questions relating to the representations that we receive from roads and other departments, and we really ought to look at having somebody at these meetings to answer the questions before we take decisions. But what's the point in having the road widening works and the extra lanes put in if what Lorna's saying is accurate, that they won't make any difference to the congestion that's going on? So what will? I mean, yeah, okay, so we can expect that it's busy just now because it's been open for about 6 weeks now. So yeah, how long does it take for the novelty to wear off? I suppose my final question is a rhetorical one, and it's would we have passed it as a committee? Would we have granted approval to this application without this particular condition being part of it? And I suspect the answer is no. Yet we are here with it open without a key condition being kept, and I can't understand why the planning service isn't doing anything about it. There's a few questions in there. I might have to come back, Harry, if it's okay.
That's fine.
I'll
get Lorna to try and answer some of them without Alan.
Okay, I'll try and do my best. I've made some notes. So I think the first point you raised was about the press release, which had indicated that the planning service were saying we weren't going to take any action. As I said earlier, enforcement's not about punishment or it's about trying to resolve the breach, and we are in negotiation with the developer, and the developer has indicated that they are going to carry out the works. So really at this point, I don't think enforcement action would achieve anything, or would really be, if the applicant appealed, I think we wouldn't be in good grounds, because we are supposed to try and resolve the situation by negotiation. And at the moment, all the indications are that the developer is trying to resolve the situation. In terms of how quickly, the April date, the Easter date, none of the issues just now are normal in the area, but currently, we would anticipate the Easter is usually the quietest period for roadworks to take place because the traffic is less. So that's why roads are happy with that period. But there is nothing to stop the developer carrying out the works quicker if they can. But carrying out roadworks does take a certain length of time. There is a process that they have to go through and consents that they have to get from the road service. And there are issues that have to be looked at, such as soon as they start digging up the road, they may have to divert services that are located underneath the road. And that's why these things take longer, because you then rely on different operators coming in and agreeing to their apparatus being moved. Now, we know that the developer is looking at what's under the ground and trying to come up with a programme, and we will work with them and encourage them as much as possible to advance these works if they can. So that's that part. The next part was about, could you change the date for compliance with the condition? I think under terms of section 42, no, you can't do that. The application is what they've asked for is set out in the application, and we can't amend that. We would just have to refuse the application for the April date. And in terms of the road widening works and why they are required, they're to help improve the general situation in that area. There are issues with, if anyone has ever tried to turn right out of Now Top Avenue into Windmill Hill Street, it's an absolute nightmare. I'm not quite sure when you would ever really want to try and do that if you were a local. I'm sure none of the locals attempt that manoeuvre, certainly not at peak times. But this was seen as an opportunity to try and improve that situation for the area. In terms of the current situation, so that those roadworks are required, but the problem just now is just the volume of traffic trying to turn into the development. And as I say, it isn't normal times. Normally people would be parking and actually going in or walking into the business. At the moment, they're all having to take their cars. I hope I've covered all the points, but I'm happy to go back over things if I've missed anything.
Just to add to that, if you look back at the history of the site, that was a main junction for Motherwell College, and I was on the board of Motherwell College for many years, and I remember the chaos it caused when Motherwell College was coming out. So it's not anything new, and hopefully if this, look at the bigger picture, not just the extending of the road, but look at the bigger picture of that site, then maybe we'll get some of the problems resolved. Next one, Councillor Fotheringham.
Thanks, convener. Basically, I am the constituency. I'm in the ward next to, on the boundary of this ward, so I am really familiar with the area, and I do drive past it, and I know it has been chaos since it opened. So it was just, I know that the city saying it's in the reports that it's not as bad as it could be, but certainly from what I have witnessed, it has been absolutely manic, and it is an accident waiting to happen down there, and that's really my concerns. Councillor Stubbs has already asked a few of the questions I had to tick off my list, which is great, so Lorna's answered those. I just feel that this was passed in August 2018, so over a multi-million-pound company. They've had plenty of opportunity. They knew this was coming. I just kind of feel in some ways that they should have been a bit more organised when it comes to obviously that local kind of issue. Again, I reiterate, one of the main things I had written down was it is totally unacceptable. We've been held to ransom, blackmailed in a sense by a company regarding these 50 staff and redundancies. That shouldn't be put in the hands of planning, and that should have been dealt with. And there is an assumption, that was another issue that's been raised. There is an assumption that it's okay, we won't make the deadline, but planning will just pass it anyway because we've got 50 staff. So I just don't think it's a way to do business. And on that basis, then I don't know where we go moving forward, but I certainly don't want a death on my conscience, because I know that the traffic there's going to be a school opening shortly, and there is real concern over road users, and there is an accident waiting to happen. I'm presuming that if this is refused today, does that mean that Tin Hortons then will close until this work is then carried out? What then happens if this isn't granted today? Maybe you can answer that. But yeah, I think the representations speak for themselves. The fact that we have got two councillors here, we've got representation from councillors, all the complaints that we've got. I don't think it is acceptable. Thank you. That's all I had to say.
Lorna, just pick up on what Councillor Fotheringham says about if we refuse that today, would that mean that we have to close?
No, councillor, it doesn't mean that the business would have to close. As I say, planning, enforcement action is all geared up to us working through negotiation. Even if we did serve a notice, a breach of condition notice following today's meeting, we would still have to permit them sufficient time under the terms of that notice to carry out the works to remedy the breach. So we wouldn't necessarily be much further forward in terms of getting the works done any faster, because these things do take as long as they take. There is a process that they have to go through to carry out those works.
Okay, Councillor Johnson.
Yeah, thanks, convener. It was really just to take up the point that Councillor Fotheringham had made there, that this was actually granted on the 23rd of August 2018. So they have had over 2 years to deal with this. Now, during these 2 years, there's the planning department have a responsibility, or do they habitually get onto these people and say, look, this is a serious problem? What progress have you made? Do you press them during that 2-year period?
Lorna?
No, it's not. It's people are applying for planning permission. It's not up to us to ensure that that's implemented. Once they start implementation, then it's up to us to ensure it's implemented in accordance with the planning permission. That's why we've got to where we are now, because they haven't complied.
Right. Okay. Councillor Douglas.
Thank you, Chair. My concern is if we were to grant this extension and they don't carry out the work by April, we are then going to be back in this very same position that we find ourselves in today. And it was just to see if that was the case, if we were to grant it, the extension, and they didn't carry out the work, what would then be open to us afterwards? Or would we be back in the same position in another 4-month extension, and then we would say no to that, or we would grant it? Just what would be the procedure for that if they didn't do the work by April?
Lorna, I take it that would be then enforcement?
Yes, we would definitely be taking enforcement action then. As I say, we are in negotiations, so we do know what steps they're taking to carry out the works. They are telling us that they are moving forward, and we have no reason to doubt that at the moment. If they do give reason to doubt that they're serious about doing the works, then we would take enforcement action.
Question for Councillor Lennon.
Thanks very much, Chair. My question is again to Lorna. Lorna, we've heard quite a few times here that the potential is enforcement action coming at a later date. Can I ask how many live enforcement cases we have in the authority and how many of them were successful?
I'm afraid I don't have that information to hand at the moment, but I can
get that supplied to you. I can get that information supplied to you. Councillor Kelly.
Thank you, Chair. In terms of, obviously, I think in the paper you're clear that you've been entering into negotiations. I think all of us understand the situation that it currently stands isn't acceptable, and we've seen that. However, I'm guessing, Lorna, you're going to continue to have those discussions if we grant this in the next 4 months, to make it clear the opinions of the committee and the need for action to be taken. You also touched on that this is actually the backup of traffic is a particular problem because we're in a pandemic and facilities are shut, so people aren't actually able to park up and go into them. So it's happening across not just Lanarkshire but across Scotland and the UK. So that also needs to be factored in. But I do think from what you've outlined in the paper, I think it's a sensible approach, taking into consideration the absolute concerns of the public and councillors, but you're making it clear that at the end of the 4 months you would then look at some kind of enforcement, but we'll keep the dialogue going between now and whatever decision is taken today and that point in 4 months.
Yep. I think that's an affirmative. There's no other person put in for any question. Oh, Councillor Johnson, I see your hand up. Tom?
It's just following on from what Councillor Douglas was saying about what happens, if 4 months down the line they still haven't done it. The problem is with the COVID pandemic, build up so many excuses that they can then get in a further extension on the extension. In this emergency situation, they can come out with all sorts of stories about problems. Then we begin to look as if we're a bit weak.
Lorna?
As I said, we're in discussion now with the developer, and I think if we were getting an indication that they weren't going to carry out those works within a 4-month period, then we would certainly be encouraging them to carry out within that time, and they would know that we would be taking enforcement action against them if they fail to comply.
Yep. Councillor Stubbs?
I was going to move something, Harry, if you're ready for that.
Well, I've got Councillor Fotheringham, maybe she's going to move something. So are you asking a question or do you want to move something?
You talking to me? Or...
I was going to move
Feel-
something as well.
Well, Councillor Stubbs, he's going to move at the end of it. It was just in case you were looking for a question before MD moves. So, Councillor Stubbs.
Right. Just based on the Harry, just based on what the discussion that's been had, and I think Trevor Douglas's point is the key one here. That in 4 months' time we're potentially going to be back, and only at that point are we allowing the planning authority to start with their enforcement action. I think it would be the wrong message to send in general from the authority if we where we wouldn't necessarily let it go for other applicants. I would move refusal of this application to allow the authority to move forward with enforcement action to ensure that we're not back here in 4 months' time.
And you're going to second that, Councillor Fotheringham, are you?
What he said, and I'll second that. Yeah, thanks.
Yep. Councillor Kelly.
Thanks, Chair. I move the recommendations, and the officers clearly have given us their reassurance and their expert opinion for the justification for why we should approve this, subject to conditions.
And the situation be constantly monitored.
Absolutely.
I'll second it.
For that?
Bill Shields.
Bill Shields. Could we take the application as a motion and the amendment is to refuse? If that's okay? Fine. So,
yeah, I'll just clarify that, Chair. So
okay.
I'm going to go through the vote by calling the roll. So in terms of the elected members, the motion will be for the grant by Councillor Kelly and Councillor Shields. The amendment will be refusal by Councillor Stubbs, seconded by Councillor Fotheringham. So I'll just go through the elected members one by one, if that's okay. So first of all, Councillor Anderson.
Motion.
Councillor Beveridge. Councillor Beveridge was on the meeting, but I did see a couple of minutes ago that he seemed to have went off, so we'll continue on. Councillor Burgess. Councillor Burgess. Councillor Burgess's screen is blank at the moment, convener. So I'll move on if that's okay.
Yep.
Councillor Michael Coyle.
Motion.
Councillor Sophia Coyle.
Motion.
Councillor Curran.
Motion.
Councillor Douglas. Sorry, Councillor Douglas, there was a bit of playback on that. Was that amendment?
Yes.
Amendment. Councillor Farouk. Councillor Fotheringham.
Amendment.
Councillor Goldsack.
Amendment.
Councillor Graham.
Amendment. A motion.
Councillor Johnston.
Motion.
Councillor Kelly.
Motion.
Councillor Lennon.
Amendment.
Councillor Logue.
You're on mute.
No, since I missed the discussion, I will not participate in the vote.
Thanks, Councillor Logue. Councillor McGregor.
Amendment.
Councillor McLaren.
Motion.
Councillor McPake.
Motion.
Councillor McVeigh.
Motion.
Councillor Quigley.
Motion.
Councillor Redding.
Motion.
Councillor Shields.
Motion.
Councillor Stocks.
Motion.
Councillor Stubbs.
Amendment.
And finally, Councillor Watson. Councillor Watson.
A motion.
Motion. That completes the voting. The motion to grant the application has attracted six.
Motion.
I've got that, Councillor Watson. Thank you. The motion has attracted 16 votes. The amendment has attracted 6 votes, so the application is granted.
Thank you very much, Mark. Next item on the agenda is pages 34 to 49, and it's Mr. W&D and RT Hill. It's a residential development associated uses, including community uses and retail in principle. A section 42 application to amend condition 12 to allow the submission of the site investigation report to be provided in phases at Weems Hill Farm, Castle Hill Road, Overtown. The recommendation is grant. Is that agreed?
Agreed.
Councillor Fodingham, see your hand up.
Yep. I just wanted to come in there just to make members aware that this is the same application in Gouthrappel that has already been to the reporter that was refused by the planning committee only last month. I'd moved against it last month, and they're basically trying to get an extension basically by the back door from what I can see. And I don't understand, you know, basically how they're coming back so quickly. Obviously, they're going in, probably looking at legal aspects to see how they can kind of get in and change the provisions. It's quite obvious that there is a lot of representations from the local community against the proposal, including the local community council. Nothing has really changed since the last time that I spoke. It is contrary to the local plan. It is going to be in the green belt. I know that our local plan following the reporter's decision would be then changed to allow it, but it currently is at the moment in the against our local plan. The school capacity, it's mentioned school capacity, and in one of the recommendations, it's the financial contribution to the education provision. I'd ask firstly where that education provision is going to be, because the current school is already at capacity. I had a PTA meeting last night at Clyde Valley High School, and the S1 intake a couple of years ago was 590. The S1 intake predicted this year is going to be 870, which is an increase in those 5 years of 280. So the school is going to be at capacity already. The reporter at that point concluded that the extension was to try and quickly to help with the housing issue and housing supply in the short term. Now this was going back years ago. And they still haven't, and they're still continuing to look for extensions on this. And as I say, I just feel as if this is another extension by the back door that was already refused a couple of months ago. So I just wanted to make that point clear. Thank you.
Lorna, is it Lorna or is it Lindsay?
I'll speak to that, convener.
Lindsay, okay.
Yeah, Councillor Fotheringham is correct. It's the same site that we looked at a couple of months ago. And it was refused by committee, and there is an appeal pending for that refusal that came in on the 21st of January. It's not the same application though, just to be clear. This application is purely to look at a change in one of the planning conditions on the extant planning permission, and it's merely to look at the how site investigations are presented to us. And now they want it to be presented on a phased basis, which on a planning perspective is reasonable. So in terms of what we're allowed to take on board when we're assessing this application, it's purely to do with that change of the condition. It doesn't alter the principle of the development. Hence, the fact that it's currently in the green belt isn't a consideration for this application. It's purely to look at the change to the site investigations. In terms of school capacity, that's dealt with there's a planning condition on the extant planning permission which asks for that to be addressed through a contribution, and that hasn't been discharged just as yet, although there are discussions between ourselves, the developer, and our education service in terms of the amount and where that money would be spent. But again, in terms of there's no connection between site investigations and education impact in terms of this particular application. Councillor Fotheringham's absolutely right. The council sought to refuse the original application on the basis that there was no housing need. and that matter was overruled by the Scottish ministers and their reporter. It is disappointing it hasn't come forward as quickly as we had hoped. The applicant has indicated that there is serious housing developer interest in the site, and I suppose we'll only have to wait and find out what interest that might be.
Okay, Councillor McPake.
Thanks, convener. Yeah, Lindsay's actually highlighted what I was going to say. It's about the site investigation, this application, rather than the overall. But now we're talking about the overall application. It goes back to 2015. And as far as I'm aware, South Wishaw is a community growth area. Other parts of North Lanarkshire, also community growth areas, are having massive housing developments upon them. Their communities are being developed, and rightly, I wouldn't say rightly or wrongly, but we as a council want to have growth, and we're promoting growth. We need growth. If you look at the Community Investment Fund, that is predicated by growth. So I think it's high time we stopped, saying it's okay for one region, one area, and you can look away and look up to the sky, whatever you want to do. It's okay for one area to get the community growth areas and get them up and running, but other areas, when it comes to them, not my backyard. I think that the time for that sort of stuff is stopped. We need to move on.
Okay, we don't.
Harry, you're on mute.
I was to try and cut the background noise. I seen there were a bit of background with a few people that maybe not muted, but don't want to look away from the application. And the applications to allow the site investigation to be provided in phases. So if we can stick to that, please. If there's anything else, Councillor Fodden went back in again.
Yeah, just to kind of reiterate again, I did say previously that I'm all for housing and all these developments taking place. There is a lot of growth and a lot of housing being built in Wishaw and my ward at the moment, and I am very grateful for that. And it's great to see that development happening. I just want to reiterate, this is not social housing. This is not affordable housing. This is Millionaires Row on the Clyde Valley Greenbelt, and that is why the community is so opposed to it, which is why it's a completely different scenario to any other housing developments I would normally be very vocal for. And on that basis, I do think it's contrary to policy, and I will be moving against it.
Well, if there's nobody else making any comments, I was just going to say, if there's nobody else making any comments, I'll take that as a motion. And again, sorry, who seconded that?
Lynn Anderson.
Lynn. So if that's okay, I'll take that. I'll take that as the amendment. The recommendation is refused, and the amendment is to the recommendation is to grant. Amendment is refused. Can I look for? Did I move on a second for grant, please?
I'll move grant, Harry.
Thank you.
I'll second that.
Seconded. Okay, Mark, if you want to just clarify, make sure that everybody knows what they're voting for.
Thanks, convener. Again, it'll be the same principle will apply. If for the motion would be to grant the application, the amendment would be to refuse the application. So I'll just go through again in alphabetical order. Councillor Anderson.
Amendment.
Councillor Beveridge. Councillor Beveridge has just put on the chat bar that he's not heard the discussion on this, so he'll not be taking part in the vote. Councillor Burgess. Nothing from Councillor Burgess. Councillor M. Coyle.
Grant.
Councillor S. Coyle.
Motion.
Councillor Curran.
Motion.
Councillor Douglas. Councillor Farouk. Councillor Fotheringham.
Amendment.
Councillor Goldsack.
Amendment.
Councillor Graham.
Motion.
Thanks,
Councillor Johnston.
Amendment.
Councillor Kelly.
Motion.
Councillor Lennon.
Amendment.
Councillor Logue.
Motion.
Councillor McGregor.
Amendment.
Councillor McLaren.
Motion.
Councillor McPake.
Motion.
Councillor McVeigh.
Motion.
Councillor Quigley.
Motion.
Councillor Redding.
Motion.
Councillor Shields.
Motion.
Councillor Stocks.
Motion.
Councillor Stubbs.
Amendment. Mark, did you get Bob's on the chat bar as well?
I've seen that. I'll come back to that. Councillor Stubbs. And Councillor Watson.
A motion.
Motion. Councillor Burgess, you put in the chat bar to vote on the chat bar. You would need to put forward on the meeting. I'm not sure if you can unmute yourself or make an indication of which way you want to vote. You're currently on mute, Councillor Burgess. Councillor Burgess, I can give you another opportunity to. Chair, unfortunately, Councillor Burgess is unable to convey his view. We've now got we've now got a point of order from Councillor Beveridge, convener. If you want to bring Councillor Beveridge,
no, I can't take a point of order in the middle of a vote. I'm sorry, but if you, what is the result of the vote?
Right, I'll go to the outcome of the vote. The motion to grant an application has attracted 15 votes. The amendment to refuse application has attracted 8 votes. The application is granted.
Granted, okay. So, Councillor Beveridge, has that covered your point of order?
Apologies, convener. Yes, it does. It was just to rate it. I've been having a hang of problems all morning getting in here, so I was not privy to the conversation. So as such, I couldn't vote. Is that correct?
Right. Okay. That's fine.
Right. Thanks.
Right. Thank you. Agenda item number 3 is a planned application, additional representations, pages 51 to 82, and it's for the retail unit, Mossbell Road, Bellsill, Lidl's retail unit. And this was continued from the plan committee on the 21st of December. Is it Graham, you talking to that one?
Yes, thank you, conveners. I'll talk to this one. As you rightly said there, members will recall that a report on this application was initially presented to the Planning Committee on 21st December. The application was continued at that meeting as a result of further comments received following the publication of the report for the meeting. Firstly, a comment in support of the application was received from Mr. Richard Lyle, MSP, and the supplementary report notes this letter was received. Secondly, one of the original objectors considered that the objection was not covered in the original report, and this is not the case, and the supplementary deals with that in the body of the report. Lastly, a late objection was received on behalf of Tesco Stores Limited. With regards to both the letters of representation, so that's the one in support and the letter from Tesco's, these are noted as being received out of time, and it's for the members themselves to determine what weight, if any, to give to these letters. The supplementary report before you covers the points of objection for members' information. And just if I may, as a point of clarification, the front page of the committee report advises that the proposal is contrary to the development plan. This indicates, when that's marked as yes, this indicates in this case that the proposed development was advertised as being potentially contrary to the local plan as the site is allocated for industrial and business use. proposed development has been assessed against the relevant policies in the local plan and found to be in accordance with or satisfy the criteria contained in the development strategy policies, DSP 1 to 4, economic and infrastructure policy, EDI 1A, and in addition to that, retail policies, RTC 1 and RTC 3. In particular, there is considered to be no significant adverse impact on the RTC1 centre network or the RTC1A town centres. And on that basis, the recommendation remains that planning permission be granted.
Thank you, Graham. The recommendation is grant. Is there anyone otherwise minded?
Move grant, Harry.
Just for the records once. Second, it could be formal second.
Second, Harry.
Thank you, Michael.
Second, Harry.
Item number 4, similar additional representation, and it's for the Little Stone drive-through restaurant at Carlisle Road, Airdrie. And this again was continued at the planning committee meeting on the 21st of December, and that'll be Lindsay. Thank you.
Thanks, convener. Yes, this is another application by Little that was on the agenda papers on the 21st of December, and it was continued pending receipt of a late representation on behalf of Tesco. The supplementary report on your papers outlines and summarises the further objection from Tesco. Again, it's a reminder that the representation was out of time, and it's up to committee what weight, if any, to give the representation. Our view is that the late representation doesn't alter our assessment of the proposal or our recommendation, and our recommendation is as per the report.
Thanks, Lindsay.
Move grant, Harry. Move grant.
Second that, Harry. Second.
Councillor Logue, seconded. Anyone otherwise minded? Oh, thank you very much. 5. Agenda on 5 is Westway Retail Park Cumbernauld, late objection.
Got it. Okay.
All right.
Oh, sorry, I'm maybe in that. Convener, can I be put into the lobby, please, in this one? I won't.
All right, okay. Right, you're put into the cupboard.
Convener, confirm that Councillor Watson has been removed from the meeting for this particular item.
Okay. Sorry, it's pages 127 to 150, and it's a late objection. And is it yourself, Graham, speak to this one?
It is indeed, convener. Yeah. In a similar vein, members will recall at the 10th of December committee, we were looking at this application, and there was a late representation received from Tesco Stores Limited. Again, the objection was made out with the public consultation periods, so it's for the committee to decide what weight, if any, to give to the objection letter. The supplementary report that's before you spells out the points of objection in the Tesco letter and provides comments on that for the committee's information. As planned, just to be, if I may, again, a point of clarification on the Town Centre Action Plan. As stated, we do not consider that this will be significantly adversely impacted. The plan's main thrust is for environmental improvements, signage, accessibility improvements, as well as working with owners to promote a more diverse mix of uses in the town centre. The council and we remain committed to this, and where we can, we allow more diverse uses in Cumbernauld Town Centre. Members may be aware, in recent years, we've granted permissions for residential development up in the superstructure next to the library. There was a planning permission given for the gym in the main centre as well, and more recently, we granted planning permission for a cinema and restaurant development. Members will be aware that this work continues, and the town centre visions are now being consulted upon, which update the action plans. The proposed development has been assessed against the relevant policies of Clyde Plan and North Lanarkshire Local Plan, and is considered to accord with or satisfy the criteria contained in these policies. And it remains our position and our recommendation that planning permission in principle be granted.
I've got Councillor Alan Graham and Councillor Johnson. Are you looking for a question or is it a proposition?
No, I would just like to comment, but I think Tom Johnson was in before me if he wants to comment first.
All right, okay. I'd you in first actually, Alan, but I don't know why. But anyway, Councillor Johnson.
Thanks, convener. It's just to say that amidst all this exciting new plan for Cumbernauld up at the Westway development, very futuristic and all that, can I put in a plea for the distant past, and you will have archaeologists on site, and if you look at the map, of course, it tells you that there was a Roman camp in the it must be the southeast corner, the complete southeast corner. And as you'll notice in the same map, the Antonine Wall itself isn't all that far to the north. There's actually a camp at Castle Carey. So when I look at what the archaeologists are going to do, it looks as if it's pretty general, but I hope there will be particular work done at the actual spot where the Roman marching camp was, and that's not just going to simply be covered over. Can I have assurances on that matter? I know it's strange looking at Roman camps in the middle of the great future for Cumbernauld, but it is very important, and it does point out in the report that it could be of national importance, the Antonine Wall initiative.
Graham?
Yeah, Councillor Johnson, I think if I can draw your attention to planning condition 14 of the proposed planning conditions, and that so we did consult with the Council takes archaeology advice, and we did consult the Council's advisor on this, and they've recommended a way forward for that. So there is a programme of investigations to be carried out, and that's to be agreed in advance. So what they'll do is they'll kind of agree between the archaeologist and the developer what areas of the site should be subject to some archaeology assessment, and that involves digging holes in the ground to actually see if there's any archaeology present, and if so, record that. So that has been taken into account.
Yeah, my problem was, convener, it didn't really strongly specify this actual spot where the Roman camp was. It seemed to be slightly vague on that.
As I said, the actual where the investigations take place will be a matter that will be agreed with the archaeologist. So, you know, he's aware of the archaeology of the site, so he will be directing the digs to where he thinks appropriate.
Okay. Councillor Graham.
Thanks, Chair. Listen, I think it's fair to say, by and large, the people in Cumbernauld welcome this development. And once again, I think the planners were doing an excellent job, because justification for this is contained in pages 128 and 129, where they really address Tesco's objections. Some of them seem pretty baseless, but it seems to be all right. This is just a comment by me, obviously. It seems to be all right for Tesco their tanks in anybody else's lawn, but nobody can actually challenge them for business. So once again, it's a bit hypocritical, I think, from these large retail giants. In many respects, I would consider it the unacceptable face of capitalism. However, that being said, it is positive development, and thank the planners again for doing an excellent job.
Are you moving Grant, Graham?
Yes.
Alan, sorry.
Yes, I'm moving Grant. I think it's fair to say.
Can we have a seconder for that?
I'll second it.
Seconded, Councillor Johnson, thank you. Is there anyone otherwise minded? No. Application is granted. Thank you very much. Agenda 6 is Notice of Plan Enforcement Appeals, pages 151, 152, there for noting. Agreed?
Agreed.
Agreed.
7 is a confirmation of tree preservation orders at Eastmoor Plantation, Woodhall Road, Cambusnethan, pages 153, 158. Is that agreed? We confirm that.
Agreed.
Agreed.
8, similar as confirmation of tree preservation order at Queen's Drive, Rosemount, Troon Gardens, Birkdale Crescent, Birkdale Woods, Westerwood, Cumbernauld, pages 159 to 164. Do we agree? We confirm that?
Agreed.
No.
That's 7th that's on the agenda.
Convener,
Oh, sorry, Councillor, right, Johnson, come in.
Yes, I noticed you simply moved Grant there. I wanted to ask a question about the tree preservation order for Dullator Road. Now, can we actually declare, I think it's sections 3 and 4 in Dullator Road, can we declare these areas as green belt? Simply, what we seem to be getting is Ogilvy Homes come in regularly with an application for houses along Dullator Road. They originally built houses there, and this was obviously meant to be a green area off Dullator Road. And they constantly come in, and we've had these accusations that they've been felling trees in the area. And we seem to be going through this pantomime all the time. Is there any way of putting a stop to this constant repetitive applications and cutting down trees by simply, can we take powers to make that stretch of Dullator Road a green belt? And then Ogilvy Homes would actually probably have to sell the place off as no longer used for housing. And is it actually green belt on the local plan?
No, no, it won't be green belt in the plan. But the way to achieve that is through the local development plan process. We can't just declare it green belt on sort of ad hoc basis. We have to go through the process, and the plan is our current plan is examination, and we couldn't make that modification at this point.
No.
But what we are doing is in promoting the tree preservation order is recognising the importance of this area in terms of its amenity value for the residents. You'll notice this report's maybe a bit more extensive than we usually put forward when we're dealing with TPOs, and it was to try and convey the strength of feeling from the local community, how strongly they feel that this area is important to them. We can't stop developers going in and carrying out works without the permissions they should have. We do attempt to do that where we can and where we have knowledge that that's happening. But I'm afraid that's the world we live in. But I think we're trying to acknowledge and make known that this area is important to the local community.
Can I ask him, is it possible now for local residents to actually apply to make this area green belt, or are they too late with the emerging local plan?
It's too late. The plan's in for the plan's already been submitted.
Yeah. So there's no steps they can take in that way, in that direction?
No.
Right.
Okay, agree the confirmation. Thank you very much for your attendance. We're now over to the local review body.
Colleagues, I'm going to have a 2-minute comfort break if anybody wants one. I'm going to need one myself. So we'll be back in 2 or 3 minutes, okay?
Councillor Shields, I was just going to confirm that the live feed will continue during that period if members can mute their microphones during that period. Thank you.
Good. Right. Well, let me know when everybody's back.
I will do, convener. Still a few cameras turned off. Maybe give it a couple of minutes.
Yep.
Convener, that's been just over 5 minutes since you gave the members a 2-minute comfort break, so it's entirely up to yourself. There's a few cameras not on. You might want to just kind of ask those members that are present in front of their laptop if they could switch their cameras on for you to commence the meeting.
Okay, colleagues. Okay, colleagues, I can see some cameras still off here. We're ready to start the meeting if everyone's ready to get in their place. You've got a countdown of 30 seconds. Mark, I'll take it that people are back and the cameras, maybe 2 or 3 might not be on. I don't want to be going into the item 2 if there's some that may not be able to participate if they're not back on for it. Yeah.
There's a couple of cameras that are off, convener, that are present. So Councillor Lennon and Councillor Stubbs are participating in the meeting. It's just their cameras are off.
Okay, we'll just fire ahead then to the local review body meeting of the 28th of January. Can I first of all have any declaration of interest in terms of ethical standards in public life? Scotland Act 2000, any declarations of interest on this item? Anyone? No. I'm conscious that people are coming and going as well. Mark, any apologies that's different from the last meeting?
There is just one apology, and that's from Councillor Stokes, convener.
Okay, moving on to item 2 then, which is the planning application 20/00447/S42, which is 2 dwelling houses, section 42 application to remove noise mitigation conditions 11, 12, 13 and 14 of planning and permission 18/01614/FUL 54 Springfield Road, Salisbury, Shotts. And we've got Gordon Lang to goes through stages 1 to 3 for us. Gordon.
Thanks, convener. Morning, convener. Morning, members. Briefly, the application site is a large plot of land currently occupied by a dwelling house in its northwest corner, and which previously also had a number of outbuildings present. Relatively flat site, bounded on each side by residential properties, to the north by Springfield Road and the south by the B7066 Glasgow-Edinburgh Road. Your photographs and map extracts on pages 27 to 35 show location plans and photographs showing the site and its setting from surrounding roads, and aerial shots of the site to give a better appreciation of its context, as well as layout plans from the original planning application to allow you to understand the proposed layouts of the plots. Your papers also contain the decision notice, notice of review, delegated report, consultation response, policy extracts and additional map and photographic slides. Now hand back to you, convener, for a decision and proceeding with the hearing.
Do we have enough information to continue with this?
Agreed.
Okay, move on.
Thanks, Convener. I'll now briefly outline the proposal, the policy position, consultation, and the application for review to assist members in making their decision. The proposal seeks the removal of noise mitigation conditions 11, 12, 13 and 14 of Planning Permission 18.01614 full, as the convener has outlined. These conditions were based on recommendations made in a noise impact assessment submitted by the applicant in support of that full planning application for 2 residential houses. The conditions specifically relate to the provision of suitable acoustic fencing on the southern boundary of the site adjacent to the B7066 Glasgow and Edinburgh Road, and specific noise reduction requirements in relation to Plot 1 granted under that permission. The purpose of the conditions was to mitigate against identified noise intrusion from road traffic on the B7066. You have in your agenda packs a site plan from the previous application, both in pages 29 and 34, which show the plots, and in the latter plan, the location of acoustic fencing in relation to the B7066 and Plot 1. I'll now proceed to highlight the policy criteria and factors noted in the Planning Officer's report of handling, which is on pages 19 to 22 of your papers, to assist you in assessment and determination of the case. Application raises no strategic issues in terms of the Clyde Plan Strategic Development Plan 2017, and therefore can be assessed in terms of the North Lanarkshire Local Plan 2012. A local plan map extract is on your papers on page 35, and the relevant policies in the North Lanarkshire Local Plan are detailed on pages 25 to 26 of your papers, and can be summarised as policies HCF 1A, protecting housing and community facilities, residential amenity, and DSP 4, quality of development. Planning Officer's report of handling in this case considered that no information had been submitted that would justify the removal of these conditions, and probably should point out that this doesn't deal with the principle of development, and therefore the report purely deals with the matter of the conditions, the principle of development having already been decided. The report of handling recommends that the proposed removal of the conditions should be refused for the reasons outlined on page 21 of your papers, and in the reasons for refusal on pages 8 and 9. Application was subsequently refused on the 26th of November of 2020. I'll now highlight the other considerations noted in the Planning Officer's report of handling or raised in the review application. In terms of consultations, there was one consultation carried out in relation to this proposal, and it was with NLC Pollution Control. That's in pages 23 to 24 of your papers, and the response indicated that they could not support the removal of the conditions, as the development would not have the necessary noise mitigation measures to meet relevant criteria to protect and mitigate against noise intrusion. There were no representations from any other parties in relation to this application. In relation to the review application, the applicant has submitted that statement, and it's on pages 11 to 18 of your papers. The statement expresses, in summary, the applicant's review that the conditions were unnecessary. Other applications along the same road have not had similar conditions attached. The site's in a semi-rural location, and additional costs of these mitigation measures could affect the build's feasibility. As with all applications, each case requires to be considered on its own merits and in accordance with the policy, unless material consideration outweigh the provisions of policies. Foregoing are the factors and issues which require to be considered by the local review body when determining this application. Now hand back to you, Convener, for agreement on the policy position, the material considerations, and to take any questions members may have before moving to a decision and reason justification. Thank you.
Okay, colleagues, we agree that the conditions on page stage 2 and stage 3. If there's nothing else that has to be added by Gordon, I'll move to any observations by any of the members.
Convener, can I just add that during the course of the meeting, the applicant had submitted further comments for perusal of the local review body. I had to respond in terms of the regulations to say that he would be unable to submit further representations at this point. So it was just to clarify that for the meeting.
Okay, thanks for that, Mark. I don't have anyone wanting to come in here I can't see anyone on the chat bar. I don't see any hands getting waved. So I'm just going to move straight on. I'm happy that with it's the Isle of Refusal on page 79. I'm going to move that. Do you have a seconder?
I'll second that.
Second it. Second that, Gavina.
And seconded by who?
Lynn Anderson.
Okay, thanks for that, Lynn. Is there anyone otherwise minded? I don't see anyone otherwise minded, so the application has been refused. Thank you very much. I don't have any more items on the agenda. Thank you for your attendance.
Oh, thanks,
Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, Gavina.